All right, so the first thing I'm going to do as far as getting the doll prepped is putting the whites on the eyes. And I'm using my 18-aught liner for that. And then after I paint them, I use this little small feather blender to take the paint strokes out. So we're going to start doing that, and we'll have to do 2 coats of the white usually to cover the eyes good. Might have got my paint too wet. I just kind of dab this and it takes out the paint strokes and kind of distributes the paint evenly. And just depending on how thick you get it on, but I normally do 2 coats of the white. Once it dries, I put a second coat on. This brush kind of helps fill in any places I missed too with the paint, and we can take off any excess with a toothpick. So got a little bit outside the eye right here. So. And as the paint dries, you can go back and dab it a little more to spread it. So we're going to let that dry, and we're going to move on to the very next thing, which will be, I'm using the 18-aught script liner for this, and this is going to be for the crease in the lips, and I'm using burnt umber and burgundy mixed together. And we're just going to do this little crease in her lips just to define it after the lips get painted on. We'll probably go over it one more time. Then I take a mixture of the brown earth, purple madder, and the moss green. And I'm going to use this for the fingernails and toenails and the ears and anything I want to put a little detail. I always put a little bit on the sides of her nose. And take a little filbert brush and kind of blend that. Then I'm going to use this little filbert again. It's a 10-aught. It's actually this one is a shader. Filbert or a shader, either one will work, but I'm going to use this color and do a little bit of defining on her ears. I just like for them to look very real. Okay. Put just a little bit in her nostrils. Go on her divot. And these are all things that it's entirely up to you if you want to add that much detail. But this is what I like to do. Okay, and then we're going to do her toenails. Tiny little things that they are. Her feet were designed to be able to wear little flip-flops or sandals, so you want her little toes to be pretty. I'm going to do the same thing to the fingernails. I'm trying to do this without getting my hands in the way so you can see what I'm doing. And then we're going to do a mani-pedi on them with the white to finish them off. I'm going to have to go back with a toothpick and kind of clean them up a little bit. These nails are so tiny, it's hard to keep in the lines on them some. Just kind of go back and clean up a little bit any place that you got out of them that's very noticeable. For the most part, they're pretty good. Okay. Now that the eyes are dry, we're going to go ahead and go back and put another coat of the white on them. After I paint the eyes, I usually go back and add a little more white to the corners where the white would show. But for now, this is good enough. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do before I finish the fingernails and toenails is I'm going to take this, it's a number 2 filbert, and I'm going to do the shadow over the top eyelid, and I'm using a brown earth mixture with a little bit of carbon black. I'm just going to do a little bit of shadow right over the eyes. And that will also get darkened as we, do the eyelashes and stuff, but just to kind of define them. And then I'm going to take my 18-aught script liner and just go right where the crease is. Okay, now I'm going to take the carbon black and just do the very top lash line. Just real light, because we'll go back over that again when we get ready to paint her eyes. Things have to be kind of built up. You know, you can't just do one line and it's going to be enough. You usually have to keep building things up to where you want them to be. I wouldn't make them too dark to begin with, because if I make her blonde or redhead, you don't want a real black brow or lash line, you know. So that's about all I'm going to do on that. And the next thing I'm going to do is take my 10-aught filbert, and we're going to do her lips. And for that I use a little bit of purple madder and a little bit of moss rose.
Moss green?
I mean moss green, yes. Thank you. I planted moss rose this morning. That made me. Now she's smiling, so she's not going to have big lips. They're going to be more thin because when you smile, they kind of disappear. Especially the upper lip, you don't want it to be too big. Once you get your shapes, then you can add a little more to the corners and, you know, to detail it. But we're going to just do a very, very small upper lip. To I'll let that dry for just a minute. Add a little bit more to the corners. And then I'm going to take my script liner again and do the crease in her lips. And I just put a few little light strokes in here to give her lips a little more of a realistic look. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is her fingernails and toenails. And I'm using the titanium white and my script liner. You just want to do a real tiny little fine line. So now if she's wearing sandals, you get to see her pretty little toes. And we'll do the same thing to the fingernails. once these dry, then I use a little bit of matte varnish on them to kind of seal them. It's just a little added protection because when you're dressing your dolls, the fingernails tend to get rubbed a lot on the toenails, and if you don't have a really good sealer on them, then this tends to get worn off. So I use the matte varnish on it before I use the Mr. Super Clear. And I also do the same with the lips because I don't want them to get rubbed off when they're dressing them and playing with them. I'm going to go ahead and put just a little more in the crease of her lips, especially in the corners. Okay, so we're going to let that dry for just a minute, and I'll get my matte varnish. This is a Jo Sonja product, and it's another item that we do sell in the Studio Pro. I can't say that. StudioDollPro.com. There we go. So this can be ordered from there as well. Kind of mix it up a little bit. And I'm going to be using this little shader to apply the matte varnish. I might have shook it a little too much. Just going to put a real small amount. And it does make them look shiny, but once she has the Mr. Super Clear on her, it kind of takes that shine away. So if you wanted her lips to be glossy after you spray her, then you would probably want to put another coat of this on her lips. It dries pretty clear, so you don't really have to be too careful when you're putting it on her toes and fingernails. Doesn't take very much of it. A bottle of this lasts for a very long time. All right, so she is now prepped and ready to be painted. Her eyes and her lashes and brows. And she is ready to go.